Page 628. In the past, men used to think that the earth was flat. Thousands of years ago, the wise Greeks knew that it was not. Hundreds of years ago, men first sailed right around the earth in ships, almost proving that it was not. In the present century, it is very common for people to travel round the earth. Every day, aeroplanes arrive in Calcutta, bringing passengers from Europe or America. Nearly every week, steamers reach Bombay, which are on journey that may take them round the world. All these steamers go round the earth in a east-west direction. But it is also possible to go round in a north and south direction. That is much more difficult because it is necessary to pass through the very cold Arctic and Antarctic region. Only a few explorers have been able to penetrate into the heart of those cold lands, but the aeroplane has opened up an easier way of crossing them. Précis. Title: Man's Circumnavigation of the Earth. The Greeks only made a guess that the earth was round and not flat. They proved it sailing round the earth. Today, it is common to travel by ship round the world in an east-west trip. North-south trips round the world are difficult, but these too have been accomplished by aeroplanes. 40th. What is a machine? It is a big tool to help man to do his work. Man has been called a tool-making animal, and from his earliest days he has made tools and tried to better them. His supremacy over the other animals, many of them more powerful than him, was established because of his tools. The tool was an extension of his hand, or you may call it a third hand. The machine was the extension of the tool. The tool and the machine raised man above the brute creation. They freed human society from the bondage of nature. With the help of the tool and the machine, man found it easier to produce things. He produced more and yet had more leisure. And this resulted in the progress of the art of civilization and of thought and science. But the big machine and all its allies have not been unmixed blessings. If the machine has encouraged the growth of civilization, it has also encouraged the growth of barbarism by producing terrible weapons of warfare and destruction. If it has produced abundance, this abundance has not been mainly for the masses, but chiefly for the limited few. It has made the difference between the luxury of the very rich and the poverty of the poor even greater than it was in the past. Instead of being the tool and servant of man, it has presumed to become his master. Précis. Influence of machine on modern civilization. Initially, man started using tools to do his works. This established his supremacy over other more powerful animals. Use of tools led to invention of machines by which man could produce more and yet had enough time for studies of arts and science. Machines found application in both human welfare and warfare. It helped not only in growth of civilization but also in destruction of mankind by producing weapons for warfare. It has produced abundance for a few, leaving the masses still poorer. Machines now appear to be monster, not the slave of man. 41st. Page 629. Have a look at a map of the ancient world. If you can find one, a map helps greatly. Without it, we can have no real idea of history. Indeed, to learn history, one should have as many maps and as many pictures as possible. Pictures of old buildings, ruins, and such other remains of those times as have come down. These pictures fill up the dry skeleton of history and make it live for us. History, if we are to learn anything from it, must be a succession of vivid images in our mind, so that when we read it, we can almost see events happening. It should be a fascinating play which grips us, a comedy, sometimes more often a tragedy, of which the stage is the world and the players are the great men and women of the past. Pictures and maps help to open our eyes to the pages of history. They should be some within reach of every boy and girl, but better even than pictures is a personal visit to the ruins and remains of old history. It is not possible to see all of these, for they are spread out all over the world, but we can always find some remains of the past within easy reach of us if we keep our eyes wide open. The big museums collect the smaller remains and relics. In India there are plenty of remains of past history, but of the very ancient days they are very few. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are perhaps the only instance so far. Title: Ancient History Through Pictures and Ruins. Old maps and pictures of old ruins give us an idea of the ancient history. They help us to imagine vividly the past events, both comic and tragic, in the lives of great men. A personal visit to the ruins and remains of old history is still more effective. One can have a book at some of these in the museum. The old relics of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa tell much about the ancient civilization of India. 42nd. The first character of right childhood is that it is modest. A well-bred child does not think it can teach its parents or that it knows everything. It may think that its father and mother know everything, perhaps that all grown-up people know everything. Very certainly it is sure that it does not, and it is always asking questions and wanting to know more. Then the second character of right childhood is to be faithful, perceiving that its father knows what is good for it, and having found always, when it has tried its own way against his, that he was right and it was wrong. A noble child trusts him at least wholly, and will walk blindfold with him if he bids it. Then the third character of right childhood is to be loving and generous. Give a little love to a child and you get a good deal back. It loves everything near it when it is right kind of child. Would hurt nothing, would give the best it has always, does not wish to get everything good in the house for itself, and delights in helping people. Précis. Right childhood. The best time to mold a man's character is his childhood. The mind remains receptive at this time, and it is easy to orient his mind to the noble traits. The first character of right childhood is modesty. A child should be trained to feel that it does not know everything. It has to be modest to know things from its parents. A child has to be faithful also to his parents. It has to follow the directions of its father regarding matters good or bad. A noble child must trust its father fully. A child has to be loving and caring also for others. A child brought up with love and affection becomes generous and helpful to others in later life. Page 630. 43rd. Man cannot reckon exactly the nature of a thing unless he is away from it. To a student, life at school seems to be one thing when he is a student there, but it is something different when he becomes a college student. The difference between striking only when a pupil is outside the school. What strikes each pupil is the absence of any freedom in school life. Pupils are compelled to learn things on pain of caning. They are forced to participate. They are forced to practice discipline. The teachers are their guardians at school. At home, their parents are their guardians. All other superiors are semi-guardians. The students are under the pressure of guidance and advice of so many well-wishers. They are also pressed down by the weight and pressure of textbooks. At college, each pupil breathes an atmosphere of freedom. It is never equivalent to license or want of restraint. For their lessons, they are left to themselves. Here, no teacher seeks to act as their guardians. Here, students learn self-help and self-reliance. They do everything on their own initiative. Précis. Title: School Life and College Life. A student while at school does not have much freedom. He is compelled to learn his lessons and practice discipline under the watchful eyes of his teachers and guardians. He has to be regular in attendance and is pressed down by the weight and pressure of textbooks. But at college he breathes a sigh of relief. No watching eyes, no guardians, no strict orders. Here he enjoys an atmosphere of freedom. He is his own guardian, he minds his own lessons and learns self-help reliance. 44th. I came in contact with animals far more in prison than I had done outside. I had always been fond of dogs and had kept some, but I could never look after them properly as other matters claimed my attention. In prison I was grateful for their company. Indians do not as a rule approve of animals as household pets. It is remarkable that in spite of their general philosophy of non-violence to animals, they are often singularly careless and unkind to them. Even the cow, that favorite animal, though looked up to and almost worshipped by many Hindus and often the cause of riots, is not treated kindly. Worship and kindness do not always go together. Different countries have adopted different animals as symbol of their ambition or character. The eagle of the United States of America and of Germany, the lion and bulldog of England, and the fighting cock of France, the bear of old Russia. How far do these patron animals mold national character? Most of them are aggressive, fighting animals, beasts of prey. It is not surprising that the people who grow up with these examples before them should mold themselves consciously after them and take up aggressive attitude and roar and prey on others. Nor is it surprising that the Hindus should be mild and non-violent, for his patron animal is the cow. Précis. Title: Animals and People. A great lover of dogs, the writer enjoyed the company of the pet dogs very much in his lonely cell in prison. According to him, Indians in general do not like animals as household pets, and they are very careless and unkind to them. Even the cow, worshipped by the Hindus, is treated badly. Different animals symbolize the characters or ambitions of different countries. The eagle of the United States of America and Germany, the lion and bulldog of England, the fighting cock of France, and the bear of old Russia, all are fighting animals, and they have molded the nature of the people of these countries to be aggressive. Similarly, the quiet natured cow has made the Hindu mild and non-violent. Page 631. 45th. Darwin planned to write a book describing his discoveries. He spent nearly 20 years collecting the matter for this book, which was to deal with every known fact concerning the problems of the species. Unluckily for Darwin, a naturalist named Wallace had been thinking over the same problems and had reached the same solution. He sent Darwin an essay which almost word for word repeated Darwin's own ideas. Yet Wallace, who was an explorer, had been working far away in the Malay archipelago, while Darwin had not left England for several years. The two naturalists decided not to quarrel for first place, and their discovery was published under both their names. Afterward, Wallace yielded the leadership to Darwin, in whom he recognized a great naturalist than himself. In 1859, Darwin published the book he had planned for so many years. It was called The Origin of the Species. Never has a scientist with one book caused such a stir in the world as Darwin did with The Origin of the Species. Précis. Title: Darwin's Discovery on Problem of the Species. Darwin worked for nearly 20 years in England, collecting materials for writing a book on his discoveries concerning the problems of the species. Simultaneously, another naturalist named Wallace had been working in Malay on the same subject, and his findings were also the same. as Darwin's, but instead of competing with each other, they published their discovery in joint names. Wallace considered Darwin a greater naturalist and acknowledged his leadership in this matter. Darwin's book Origin of the Species, containing his discoveries, created a great sensation in the world. 46. Education is not an end, but a means to an end. In other words, we do not educate children only for the purpose of educating them. Our purpose is to fit them for life. As soon as we realize this fact, we will understand that it is very important to choose a system of education which will really prepare children for life. It is not enough just to choose the first system of education one finds, or to continue with one's old system of education without examining it to see whether it is in fact suitable or not. In many modern countries, it has for many time been fashionable to think that by free education for all, whether rich or poor, one can solve all the problems of society and build a perfect nation. But we can already see that free education for all is not enough. We find in such countries a far larger number of people with university degree than there are jobs for them to fill. Because of their degree, they refuse to do what they think low work, and in fact work with their hands in thought to be dirty and shameful in such countries. Précis. Title: The Purpose of Education. The purpose of education is to make one fit for life. Therefore, instead of continuing with an old system of education, we should examine properly and choose a system of education which will be suitable for a child and prepare him to live a proper life. Free education for all does not solve all the problems of society, nor does it build a perfect nation. It produces a large number of university degree holders without any job opportunity for all. They are reluctant to do work with their hands, which they consider as undignified, dirty and shameful. Page 632. 47. Rise, for the day is passing, and you lie dreaming on. You brothers are cased in armor, and forth to the fight are gone. A place in the ranks awaits you. Each man has some part to play. The past and the future are nothing in the face of stern today. Précis. Title: Act. Act in the living present. The present is more important than the past or the future. So, instead of wasting our time in idle dreams while others are engaged in the struggle for existence, we should go on doing our duties. 48. The world's all a fleeting show, for man's illusion given, the smiles of joy, the tears of woe, deceitful shine, deceitful flow, there's nothing true but heaven, and falls the light on glory's plume, as fading hue of even, and love and hope and beauty's bloom are blossoms gathered for the tomb. There's nothing bright but heaven. Poor wanderers of a stormy day, from wave to wave we are driven, and fancies flash and reasons weigh. There's nothing calm but heaven. Précis. Unreality of earthly pleasures. All our earthly joys and sorrows are mere illusions. So also are all glory, love, hope and beauty, etc. They vanish altogether within a very short time. Imagination and reason may help us temporarily out of the troubles and difficulties of life, but real peace and help can come alone from God. In fact, there is nothing true, glorious and peaceful but Him. Exercise 2. Narrative and descriptive. First, according to a Greek legend, men were very happy in the beginning. Sorrow came to them later in this way. A man had a wife named Pandora. There was no other woman on earth at that time. She had a box given to her by Jupiter, king of the gods. Within it were shut up all the good fairies who make men happy. Pandora did not know this, but she was asked never to look into the box. One day her curiosity got the better of her, and she lifted the lid, when all the fairies came out and flew away. Only the sweet fairy of hope was left when Pandora closed the box, but all the others were lost to mankind forever. Page 633. Second. Once upon a time, a nobleman built a grand house. On the front of the gate he wrote the words, "This house is to be given to the first man who can prove that he is contented." One day a stranger knocked at the gate and desired to speak to the nobleman. I am come," said he, "to take possession of his house, because I can prove that I am contented." The nobleman said in reply, "But there is certainly no trace of that quality in you. If you are contented, you would not wish to get possession of my house." Saying this, he turned the man out. Third. One day, Maharshi Devendranath Tagore came to a bare piece of land in course of his travel. Only 2 big trees grew upon it. He liked the place very much because it was so large and so far away from a city. He felt that it would be a very good place in which one could think about God. It is said that he sat down in the shade of one of the trees and let his thoughts go to God and good works. He at once made up his mind to buy the land and build an ashram there. He bought it and called the house Shantiniketan. He planted trees and flower gardens and fruit gardens. Fourth, a man in the East, where they did not require as much clothing as in colder climate, gave up all worldly concerns and retired to a wood. There he built a hut and lived in it. His only clothing was a piece of cloth which he put on round his waist. But as ill luck would have it, rats were plentiful in the wood, so he had to keep a cat. The cat required milk, so a cow had to be kept. The cow required tending, so a cowboy was employed. The cowboy required a house to live in, so a house was built for him. To look after the house, a maid had to be engaged. To provide company for the maid, a few more houses had to be built, and people were invited to live there. In this way, a little township sprang up. Fourth, a man in the East, where they do not require as much clothing as in the colder climate, gave up all the worldly... Fifth, Rip Van Winkle was a simple but very lazy fellow. When his wife took him to task for this, he used to walk out, with his gun and his dog for company. One day he met a group of strange-looking fellows in a place. He drank with them and soon fell fast asleep. When he woke up, there was no sign of the strange people, nor of the dog. Suddenly he felt something strange on his face. To his surprise, he found that he had a long white beard. He found his gun lying on the grass, rusty and useless. His clothes were all rags, and his legs were so cold and stiff that he could hardly walk. 6. Nowadays, people keep their most precious possessions in steel safe or leave them for safety in stony rooms or in their banks. In the old days, before banks and stony rooms came into existence, people who wanted to keep safe anything they treasures dug up the ground and buried the stuff. When they needed it again, they dug it out. Man was here, perhaps without knowing it, only imitating nature. For long before man emerged, nature had hidden underground the most precious of her products. Thousands of years later, when man was groping in ignorance for means with which to raise himself from the level of beast, he stumbled, now here, now there, upon these hidden treasures. The things he discovered are called minerals, and their beds, which lie below the surface, are called mines. 7th. One day an English gentleman called Rowland Hill saw a postman take a letter up to the gate of a house. A young girl came out to receive it. The price of the postage was 1 shilling, but she had no money to pay for the letter. The postman put it back in his bag and turned away. Rowland Hill paid the shilling, and the postman handed the letter to the girl. It was her dear brother's letter. This made Hill think how letters could be sent at less cost, so that the poor and the rich alike might hear more often from their friends and relatives. He at last made a plan, and with the help of government soon started cheap postage. We should thank Rowland Hill for doing us a great service. 8th. A poor boy was employed at the house of a lady of rank as a servant. One day, finding himself alone in the lady's dressing room, he waited a few moments to take a view of the beautiful things in the room. A gold watch, richly set with diamonds, caught his attention, and he took it up in his hand. Immediately, a wish arose in his mind. Ah, if I had such a one! After a pause, he said to himself, "But if I take it, I shall be a thief. And yet," continued he, "nobody sees me, nobody. Does not God, who is present everywhere, see me?" Overcome by these thoughts, and laying down the watch, he said, "No, I would rather be poor and keep my conscience than be rich and become a rogue." 9th. The United Nations wants to do good to all mankind, but the distress amongst nations has been hampering their united efforts. Yet there are many people of goodwill all over the world who make it possible for the United Nations to go on with its work. A good deed is also a difficult deed. So said King Ashoka 2,200 years ago. He also said, "Let the small and the great exert themselves, and may such exertion long endure." He had put these and much other good advice on pillars and rocks all over his kingdom, so that men might learn them and be good. Let us take his advice. Though we are small, let us help the men of goodwill in their good and difficult work. 10th. Lamartine, the French poet and statesman, was never rich. He had a great desire to possess a carriage of his own, and for this purpose he saved money, which he put in a box. He had saved about 1,000 francs when a poor widow with several children came to his room and told him with tears that she had no bread to eat, that her furniture had been seized, and that she and her children had been turned out into the street. "How much do you require?" said Lamartine. 1,000 francs, replied the poor woman. "Come here, they are," said the generous poet, and put his saving into her hand. The next day a friend asked him what he would do about his carriage. "Oh, my friend," said he, "I shall continue to go on foot. It is better for my health." 11th. A Swiss named Henry Dunant wrote a book in 1859 in which he described the suffering of soldiers wounded in battle. People who read that book were moved to pity and wanted to do something. So in 1863, representatives of some governments met at Geneva in Switzerland. There they promised to save from harm all soldiers wounded in battle as well as those who took care of them. This agreement is known as the Geneva Convention. Societies were then formed in many countries to look after the wounded and the sick, and they united to form one association named the International Red Cross. You all know that Jesus Christ was killed on a wooden cross. These countries adopted the Red Cross as the symbol because, as Christians, they all have great respect for this sign. The International Red Cross also traces lost people and keeps itself in touch with prisoners of war. In times of peace, it goes and serves wherever there is a famine, a flood, or an earthquake.